You step into a room and the air feels heavier than it should, like someone left a window cracked and all the weather slipped in. The laughter hits the ceiling, but the chords underneath are off-key, a tinny clang behind clear voices. People ask how you can tell, as if perception were a supernatural trait instead of a set of tiny muscles trained to notice. They told me once that seeing what others do not see is a gift. I want to say this up front. Without boundaries and practice, that gift can become a liability. It can turn attention into accusation, clarity into loneliness, and compassion into a wound. I want to tell you about what happens when perception outpaces the social script. I will show you the stages where it breaks relationships, where it corrodes your energy, and where it can become a quiet form of exile. I will tell you a story about Sarah, Mark, Elena, and a room that refused to be honest. I will offer practical steps you can use as soon as you feel the tug of someone else massing inside your chest. By the end, you will have a way to keep your clarity without becoming the person everyone secretly avoids. Imagine a Friday night living room. The lamp throws a warm pool on the sofa. There is the stale perfume of wine and microwaved garlic. Chairs scrape lightly against the hardwood, and someone, probably David, tells a joke, and the laugh comes fast, automatic, like a reflex. I notice the wife at the edge of the circle, Maria, with her fingers pressed into the fabric of her dress, breathing through a smile that does not reach her eyes. I smell cigarettes on Jacob, even though he promised he quit. I hear Elena clear her throat before she speaks, the sound like a small animal freed. "How are you doing?" you hear from across the room. "Good," comes the rehearsed answer. Then a pause, a crease behind the smile. I can feel those pauses as if they were my own ribs tightening. What do you do when you see a fissure and everyone else keeps painting platters over it? There are three main dangers when your sight does not match the crowd. The first is isolation. You become the mirror that makes others uncomfortable. The second is attack. When you name what is off, people often shoot the messenger to avoid the mirrors in themselves. The third is absorption. If you do not learn to separate what is yours from what you take in, you will become porous, a sponge that loses shape. I learned these the hard way through someone named Sarah. Sarah came into my life like a breath that knows exactly where the draft is. She described perception as a kind of ache, a pressure behind the sternum each time a secret crossed the room. At first, she was magnetic. People liked the way she saw. You notice everything. Priya would say admiringly, tapping the table as if to summon more observation. Mark introduced her to his circle. She listened and then said what most thought but did not say. In small doses, that observation felt like honesty. Over time, honesty became a storm. "Why are you always so intense?" Mark asked one night, his voice low and edged with a laugh that was not a laugh. "I am not trying to be intense," Sarah replied, the light in her face gone. "I just noticed that Emma is fading in these conversations, and I am worried." "Emma is fine," Mark said. "We are celebrating. Do not be that person." "Do not be that person" landed like a verdict. Sarah tried to explain. There were 4 short exchanges that night, each one a brick. "She is smiling for the cameras." So what? So it matters. Stop making things weird. They walked away from her. The room smelled of old perfume and stale applause. She left with a scarf knotted too tight around her throat. Pause with me and write one word in the comments about the last time you felt like you saw something others missed. A single word. Yes, you can do it. Tell me the place and one word about the feeling. People used to either dismiss you or thank you. I will read through these and I will bring some of them up in later videos so we can make a map of how this sensitivity shows up across kitchens, offices, and parks. Sharing one word helps people see they are not alone. My own backstory unfolds in 3 parts. I grew up in a house where silence carried stories. As a child, I learned to listen to the space between words because my parents believed volume hid truth. I remember the smell of rain through the window and the way my mother folded her hands when she kept a secret. That childhood taught me to expect that much of what mattered would be unspoken, and to treat small details like breadcrumbs. In my late teens, an event shifted me. At college, I watched a mentor, a man named Professor Lang, get praised for decisions that later revealed a pattern of small cruelties. I spoke up and was told to pick my battles. The social cost of telling truths I thought necessary burned me. That was my first real lesson in the price of perception. I learned that knowledge without strategy becomes a kind of violence. Today, I still feel the pull of other people's inner weather. I work with people like Elena, Dr. Evans, and Maria on how to hold clarity without breaking trust. I have learned routines that protect me. I meditate, I keep a notebook by my bed, I practice saying fewer words and setting clearer boundaries. I belong to a small group with Priya and Jacob where we check in honestly and learn to carry each other's limits. My present is quieter than my past, but it is deliberate. There is a specific meeting I remember where the cost of speaking up became obvious. It was a team meeting with Mark, David, Elena, and 2 clients in the room. The air had the hollow hum of fluorescent lights, and the coffee had that burned edge. I noticed the client, a woman named Rosa, clenching her jaw when the deadline was glossed over. I asked a question about risk control. "We will manage it," Mark said too quickly, his hands fluttering like he wanted applause. I tried again, more pointed. He stared, then laughed. "We do not need to be negative in a creative meeting." I pressed, "What if this causes harm in the field?" He snapped, "You are always so cautious." The exchange escalated. "I'm trying to protect the team," I said. "It feels like you are undermining the client," he replied. "I am trying to keep us honest," I said. That was the last time they invited me to lead a pitch. The room smelled of burnt coffee and old paper. Chairs scraped, lights buzzed, and I left with my notes folded like a white flag. This was a moment where truth collided with collective desire to keep discomfort at bay. Moment of tension 1. I watched Sarah the day she was formally excluded from a dinner group, small acts that compounded into erasure. The room was warm, the music polite, the light soft, but the words were knives. "You always interpret things," Elena said softly. "Stop reading into everything," Priya added, her voice like linen over ceramic. Sarah tried to explain the image she had seen, the concern for Jacob's drinking, for Maria's strained laugh. The group tilted into defensive choreography. Voices rose in a rhythm, sentences clipped, accusations like paper cuts. By the time dessert arrived, the social script had rewritten itself, so Sarah no longer fit. The tension was not a shout, but a slow withdrawal, an atmosphere thick as honey. She left with empty hands and a quiet face that would take months to unclench. This was the long kind of hurt that does not leave bruises, but changes the landscape of who is invited to speak. Moment of tension 2. In a staff meeting, I pointed out a pattern of ignoring customer feedback that could become a real safety issue. There were 5 of us present, the air smelled of toner, and someone wore a loud cologne. Jacob said I was paranoid. "You always see problems before anyone else," he said with a twist. I kept the exchange compact, patient but firm. "I want to prevent harm," I said. "You are overreacting," Maria answered. "You are killing morale." My words got reframed as negativity. The room rotated its judgment toward me. The tension closed like a fist around my chest, heat rising, a metallic taste, my hands damp. That meeting ended with me being asked to step back from client-facing roles. The cost was not a firing, but something slower and more isolating. The wound was invisible to them and raw to me. When perception becomes a source of pain, how do you live with it and not be consumed? The river metaphor helps. Picture perception as a river that runs through a town. Sometimes the river brings fish and fresh water, and sometimes it brings flood. You cannot dam the river every time it rises. What you can do is build levees where necessary, plant trees on the banks to absorb excess, and choose where to drink. The principles I have learned rest on 3 practices you can try this week. First practice is solitude as calibration. 10 minutes alone, with an unlit room, a journal, the smell of plain tea, will let you sort which feelings glued to you are yours and which were left there by someone else. Second practice is linguistic containment. Learn short phrases that protect without accusing. I notice something different is less weapons grade than you are lying. Use presence, not prosecution. Third practice is alliance building. Name at least 5 people who can be mirrors that do not weaponize honesty. I count Elena, Priya, Mark, Dr. Evans, and David as different kinds of mirrors in my life, some kinder than others. Lean into people who reflect in ways that do not punish you for clarity. Some concrete tools. Before voicing an observation, ask, is this my responsibility right now? If the answer is no, hold it. If the answer is yes, practice a 3-step delivery. Soften, state, offer. Soften by situating yourself. State the observation briefly, offer a choice for response. In practice, it sounds like this. I may be noticing something that is not obvious. I see that the report left out safety checks. Would you like me to point them out now or take notes and share them later? That phrase buys you a moment and diffuses the reflex to attack the messenger. There are also bodily practices. When you feel invaded, press your feet into the ground, breathe slowly, name 3 tactile details in the room, and drink water. This brings you back from being a container for others and into your own body. Hold a time boundary. Tell yourself you will not engage deeply for an hour after a heavy social event. That window lets emotions settle. Now the long epilogue, where time shows its work. 1 month from putting these practices into place, you will notice smaller drains. Some evenings will still sting, but your sleep will deepen because you are not hauling other people's weather through the night. 3 months in, people who mattered will notice you are less anxious at gatherings. Some of them will ask you why you seem calmer, and that becomes a chance to teach with tenderness. 6 months from now, your perception will feel more like a tool than a liability. You will still see fissures, and you will still feel compelled to name things. The difference is you will have learned to choose your moments, to carry alliances like a small lamp rather than a blinding spotlight. You will have traded frantic rescue for steady presence. This path does not mean you will stop caring. It means you will care in ways that are sustainable. Your clarity can become a gift that heals conversations instead of shattering them. It can turn you into someone who offers light without making others feel exposed. If this reflection landed for you, subscribe for more explorations of living sensitive in a busy world. And share 1 word in the comments about the last place you felt you saw something others did not. It helps others know they are not alone. To close, remember this phrase as a practice and a compass. See clearly, speak kindly, and keep your own feet on the ground.